and welcome to tonight's episode of the Red Light Sports Ramble, brought to you by the Red Light Sports Network. I'm Evan Witallison, and there is no Troy tonight, but I am not alone, as we have special guest host Eugene Pitchford of the Home Court Sports Network, which you can catch every Wednesday night here on Blog Talk Radio, joining me. Thanks for filling in tonight, Eugene.
Oh, well, I'm glad to be here. I'm going to follow your lead. We love your show, and we're going to try to provide a good show for the listeners tonight.
Thank you. We appreciate your show as well. You know, I didn't get a chance to listen to last night's quite yet, but I am really excited to listen to it. You actually got on a topic that Troy and I got on a little bit on Saturday as well, so I'm kind of, we're talking about your take a little bit pre-show, but I'm kind of interested to hear your guys' take on last night. But looking, speaking of last night, the Wisconsin Badgers won their eighth straight game, beating Purdue 76-70 last night. Frank Kaminsky led the way with 22 points for the Badgers. Trayvon Jackson was 14, but only 2 points in the second half. Gosser had 13, and Sam Decker only 5 points yesterday. So it's nice seeing the Badgers win, even with Decker struggling so much. And free throw percentage, which is starting to become a concern for me, they're just 74% of the line. And it seems to be an ongoing trend right now for Wisconsin. They were outscored in the second half 46-41, unable to put Purdue away, which they dominated Purdue pretty much the entire first half, going into halftime with a 35-24 lead. And if you look at their track record over the last few games, Michigan, they had a pretty sizable lead at the half, and Michigan came close before the Badgers did finally put it away. Wisconsin outscored in the second half 43-41. Against Iowa, they got outscored in the second half 43-39. And against Penn State, they outscored Penn State in the second half, but it was just 40-39 in a game that was much closer than it needed to be. And looking at these stats, Eugene, and looking how they performed in the second half lately, going into the NCAA tournament, does that concern you at all when you see them struggling to close out teams in the second half? Is that something that could bite them on the butt in a few weeks?
Well, it does concern me. In order to go far in the tournament or to make a good run, you have to be able to close teams out. And in some cases, you have to be able to really stomp on them, because you don't want to give anybody a chance or a puncher's chance of a haymaker three-pointer at the last second. And you're going to be playing teams that are as good or better than you. So you're going to have to take advantage of every opportunity that you have. And in the back of my mind, I'm wondering, is this the same old Badgers? To do relatively well during the regular season. For many people, they may have exceeded expectations this basketball season. But in the back of my mind, I'm wondering, are we going to get put out in the first or second round? I don't want it to happen, but we got to have that killer instinct, and we got to maximize our opportunities when we are at least up in the scoring column. The problem is the way we play, like the style of offense of the Wisconsin Badgers and Bo Ryan's system, it's not much margin for error. I mean, we either squeak by or we just lose. We have to put some more points on the board to have a little separation. So I am concerned as we go into the NCAA tournament in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, this is a different Wisconsin team than the past in regards to their scoring punch, especially beginning of the year. They put 86 on St. John's. They squeaked by Florida 53-53. They put 103 against North Dakota, 88 against Bowling Green. I know some of those schools aren't the greatest there are, but they were putting up 80, 70 points consistently in the first part of the season. And the first part of the Big Ten season, they when they went on their little spurt where they lost 3 in a row, and they lost 5 or 6, including 3 at home, including 1 loss to Northwestern. Their defense was not playing well, especially their perimeter defense, and their issues were kind of hidden during that 16-game winning streak. When they, Iowa, when they barely squeaked by Iowa at home, that's when some of the problems started to come out a little bit, and then Indiana burst the seams out of there, and Michigan really did. But they seem to have rightened the ship by winning 8 in a row. But looking over these 8 wins, they just seem to be lacking something. And Frank Kaminsky's really come back after a hot start to start the year by him. He's really come back to be a much better down the stretch. I believe he has double figures in every one of these 8 games, including a couple 20-point outcomes as well. And they need him to be a 7-footer on both sides of the floor if they do want to advance in the tournament. But one guy who needs to really turn it up, and he's been very quiet in long stretches, and that's Sam Decker. Against against the trying to think of what game I was at earlier this year, the Michigan State win. In that Michigan State win, he had 11 points, I believe, or 12 points, but 3 of those were 9 of those points were 3-pointers. And he, against Michigan earlier in the year when they lost at home, he had very long stretches where he didn't score any points. He had 8 points pretty quickly against Michigan, and then he didn't score again until early second half, and then he didn't score again until like 2 minutes to go in the game. If the Badgers want to be different this year, they need him to step up. What's your thoughts on Decker's struggles lately?
Well, that's the thing about Decker. A lot of times he seems to just fade away, just not even be a factor on the floor offensively or defensively. And at the beginning of the season, when you run off those numbers, a lot of those high-scoring games the Badgers had were in non-conference games. And they kind of, I don't want to say they fell back to the pack once the Big Ten season started, but to a degree they kind of did. But in those non-conference games, Decker was electric. I was convinced that he was a lottery-type player if he chose to come out. But as the season went on, and there's no knock against Decker, he's a great player. I mean, when he wants to score, he seems, I don't want to say he's unstoppable, but he seems very effective. And I'm like, whoa, this guy's really good, but I'm not sure. I know now I don't buy into he's a lottery-type player, and I think he has to show more consistency. We're not averaging to average 30 points and 15 rebounds and 10 assists, but to be able to have an imprint on the game, even when your shot is not falling in. And I believe he's long enough and athletic enough to impact the games in other ways when he doesn't score. My overall concern with the Badgers, let me say it this way. I'm not concerned about the Badgers playing another good athletic team that isn't patient. I'm concerned when the Badgers play an athletic team that is patient. And I need to see them, and hopefully it aligns correctly where we get good matchups favorable for us. But I can see the Badgers having an early exit. Now, I don't want that Badger fan. I'm not a Badger hater. It's just that there are times we look amazing, and there are times we look like what are you guys doing? Like, you talk about the defensive lapse. It was obvious. It was like something else was on their mind other than those games. I know exactly which games you're referring to. I watched those games also. But I want the guys to do well. I'm just concerned. I mean, I wouldn't bet a Sweet 16 on the Badgers this year, although their regular season has exceeded my expectations.
Yeah, they've exceeded my expectations for the most part this year too. I was expecting, same old Bo Ryan team. They finished top 4 in the Big Ten, made the NCAA tournament. I wasn't expecting a 16-0 start. I'm not, and then even after that 16-0 start, when they lost Indiana, Michigan, and Minnesota, and they were ugly losses too. Especially Minnesota one, they just got killed. And I made a prediction. And I had said after that loss, you might have saw it on Twitter, that if, Wisconsin didn't come back to beat Minnesota, it was at halftime in that game, I didn't think they were going to even make the NCAA tournament because they did not look good at all with Minnesota. And even then they lost to Northwestern, and then they lost to Ohio State. And now, since they won 8 in a row, there's some people on on Twitter, they didn't bring anything up after the Northwestern loss. But now after every Badger win, they're so what do you think of these comments now? What do you think of these comments now? But they've definitely exceeded my expectations. I'm just like you. I'm concerned come NCAA tournament. See, I'm not concerned when they face a team that's going to run up and down the court. Wisconsin seems to force those type of teams to play their style. I'm more worried about when they play a more, a more athletic team that plays a similar style that they do, because then Wisconsin can't play Wisconsin basketball. That's my biggest concern. Now, Troy and I talked about this on Tuesday a little bit, talking about what seeding do you think we think Wisconsin should get. They're currently 25-5. Going into the game yesterday, they had an RPI of 5, second in the country. Their strength of schedule is second in the country. 9-3 versus the RPI top 50, 15-4 versus the top 100, and now they're starting to get into conversation with Syracuse struggling as of late, Duke losing to Wake Forest last night. It doesn't seem like too many teams really want a 1 seed, and Wisconsin back in that conversation like they were when they were 16-0. Do you think they deserve a 1 seed, and if not, what seed would you give them?
That's a tough question, and with similar records, I just see Syracuse, your Dukes, your Floridas. I see them separate from Wisconsin. Wichita State is the unknown. I'm not really sure. Do you get a 1? Do you get a 2? But assuming Syracuse and Duke just don't lose, just keep losing out, I'm going to assume that they may be 1s. I don't know. And I can't think of a West Coast team that's that high right now. But I'm going to guess, if I had to guess, the Badgers 2 seed, and at worst a 3. I don't want them to be a 3. I prefer the 2. I just can't see them being a 1. Not unless something crazy happens. If the other teams in front of them just lose out and the Badgers win the Big Ten tournament. So that would be my shot. Probably a 2 seed, and that worst case scenario, a 3 seed. I don't see the 1 seed at all. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I think they deserve to be in the conversation for a 1. I don't know if they're going to get 1. I think they're going to end up with a 2 or a 3 as well. And I think a lot has to do, they have a game against Nebraska coming up on Sunday, and that's not going to be an easy game. Nebraska is shocking a lot of people right now, and they're trying to make the NCAA tournament. And with a win on Sunday, it'll be their 18th win of the year, and they have a good shot at going into March Madness. Now, I think if Wisconsin beats Nebraska, which will be a tough road game, and then wins at least 2 games in the Big Ten tournament, I think they're going to get a 2. Now, I know a lot of times it doesn't matter if you win the Big Ten tournament or not in regards to seeding, because a lot of the seedings are already done. But I think you have both Wisconsin and Michigan in conversation for a 1 seed. If the Big Ten championship game comes down to Michigan and Wisconsin, I would not be surprised to see the winner of that game end up getting a 1 seed. I think the selection committee, I think they would be sobbing if it ends up being Wisconsin-Michigan in the Big Ten tournament game, because they want that bracket pretty much set. And if Wisconsin loses Sunday and they don't win at least 2, knowing the track record of the selection committee, I wouldn't be surprised if they give Wisconsin a 4 or 5. But I think they should have at least a 2 or a 3. But we'll see. It's a lot of basketball left for Wisconsin, and hopefully this would be a year that they make a deeper run into the tournament. It's definitely, in my opinion, kind of wide open in college basketball right now. There's really not that one dominating team that you're going to stand out and say they're going to win it all. Like last year, I saw with Louisville. I picked Louisville to win it all in my brackets because they stood out to me quite big. I don't see that team in college basketball this year at all. Do you see anyone that you're pointing to right now saying they're going to win it all?
a tough question. The only two teams that I see that and throw out the record, but the only two teams that have that look to me will be Duke or Syracuse. I can see both of them going on deep runs. I will expect those two to go on deep runs. Now, they have been losing as of late, so I can't deny that fact. But just the look of the teams, those, to me, will be your two teams, in my opinion. And I just want to throw this in, too. Sometimes I think Wisconsin is its own worst enemy by our style of play. And so when you're trying to impress the selection committee, there's nothing about Wisconsin that wows you. And so I think
I'd agree.
Perception is reality sometimes with Wisconsin, and they won't get the benefit of a doubt of a running gun team with a lesser record.
Yeah, I can see that. I think their style of play can definitely hurt them when it comes to that in regards to the selection committee. And, Duke, I just think they can be kind of inconsistent at times, and Syracuse is looking very inconsistent right now. Now, moving on to baseball, spring training is going on right now, and I'm probably just going to more focus this on Brewer baseball. Now, looking at the Brewers right now in Arizona, you have, and this has been the talk on Sports Talk all day here in Milwaukee, is Ricky Week. He's currently batting .444 down in Arizona, and Scooter Gennett isn't even batting over 100 right now. He's at .077. Then you have Ryan Braun that's batting over 800 right now. First, do you think Ricky Weeks can continue? I know he's not going to bat 400 on the year, but do you think he can continue his pace going into the season? And do you think the Brewers' success this year depends on Ricky Weeks turning it around this season? And what do you think of Ryan Braun's start so far? Do you think he's starting to quiet some of the doubters a little bit?
Okay, well, I'm going to go out of order in the answer. I think the Brewers' success is gonna come down to pitching. I mean, you can have all the bats in the world, but I think quality pitching, quality mid-level reliefs, quality late-inning game reliefs is going to come down to pitching. To me, that seems to be what separates really good teams from average teams. And I think we've made some headway to try to make the pitching side of the team a little bit better, or a lot better. As far as Ryan Braun, I think he has a point to prove, to see what he could do, not to see what he could do clean, but to prove what he could do clean. I don't expect him to continue on that pace throughout the regular season. It's virtually impossible. But I do expect Ryan Braun to have a very good season to try to prove the doubters wrong. And plus, he has a lot to prove. Like, who knows? Maybe there's a trade in the works, or if the Brewers do trade him, he wants to show the other teams what he can do. So I expect a really great season, a really good season out of Ryan Braun. It's really messed up, because if he don't have a good season, they would say it's because he's not on the juice or he's not on the PEDs. And if he does have a good season, they're like he's still cheating. So he's in a very peculiar spot. But I think Ryan Braun will more than likely do well. He has good talent with or without PEDs. As far as Ricky Weeks, I'm somewhat biased on Ricky Weeks. At this point, he's my favorite Brewer. It was a painful season, a regrettable, forgettable season that he had last season. And I'm actually surprised that they didn't get rid of him last season at some point. I'm happy to see him batting the average. I believe he's around, 400? Somewhere in the 400s?
Yeah,
we know good and well Ricky Weeks can't.
444 right now.
And so we know that's virtually impossible for him to sustain that during the regular season. I actually thought that Scooter would actually win the job. I thought Ricky would continue his tanking that he had from last season, but it's going to put the Brewers in an awkward spot, because it's like, okay, we see this now, but we remember last season, and how long will it be before you go back to that? And if we're not letting Scooter play, he's not getting those game reps. So I think at some point Ricky's going to fall back down to earth, and then we're going to have a problem in the midseason. He makes too much money to be a bench player. So we're either going to play him or we're going to waive him or trade him. But he just can't sit on the bench. And if he's playing, you're not getting Scooter the time, or there's no DH in the National League, so Scooter probably won't be playing. And I don't want to see a platoon at second base. So that's kind of my thoughts on Ricky Weeks.
Yeah, I don't want to see a platoon either. I want, Ricky Weeks to have the job because he's, playing outstanding baseball. And, I think outstanding baseball for Ricky Weeks would be batting probably around between 260 and 270. That'll be outstanding baseball for Weeks. And I think, with Weeks' power and his ability to get on base with the bean balls and drawing the walks, I would be fine with Ricky Weeks starting and only batting about 260. I'll be perfectly fine with that. Now, I'm not.
I just hope
I like Scooter. Go ahead.
He's not batting leadoff. I don't like him in that spot either.
Yeah, I don't like him either, but unfortunately right now I don't know if they have anyone on the roster that I feel comfortable in doing it. Gene Segura is still a young player. I don't know, if he'll be able to make that adjustment to batting leadoff. And Carlos Gomez, I like him a little further down the order. 4, 5, or 6, because he has a nice pop to his bat, and he strikes out a lot, as does a number of players on the Brewers. Now, I hope we get the weeks that we saw before that, he hurt his ankle back in 2011, because he hasn't been the same player since that ankle injury he suffered. Now, Scooter, I like Scooter. I've interacted with him in the locker room, in the clubhouse. I like Scooter. I'm just not 100% sold on him yet.
Right. I just think that just in Ricky Weeks' case, I think, and like I said, and your baseball knowledge is far more than mine, but I just don't think batting first contributes to the batting average. This is my personal opinion, but I think he's more suited to be stashed 5, 6 at the 5 or 6 hole than leadoff spot, because now he's thinking too much.
Yeah. Yeah, I could see that, and I would prefer not having Weeks in the leadoff spot, but with trading Aoki, which I think might come back to hurt them. I think Chris Davis has a ton of power, but I don't know how I feel about Chris Davis being the everyday left fielder, because he had a pretty good season last year, yeah. But who knows how that's going to carry over into this year. So I don't know, it just, I didn't like trading Aoki because he was a great leadoff hitter. He allowed you to move, put Segura in the 2 spot, which Segura flourished in. He allowed you to, have Weeks a little further down in the order, or Scooter a little further down in the order when they were in there. Gomez didn't have to lead off. Aoki gave the team a lot. And I think that's going to end up hurting the Brewers a little bit in the long run. But looking, we have just under 6 minutes to go. With the pitching acquisitions they made with Garza and K-Rod coming back, do you think they did enough to be able to catch the Cardinals for the division? Or do you think they're still going to fall a little short?
At this point in time, I think they're going to fall a little short. I think we'll definitely be way better than we were last season. But I mean, we're in a conference that's loaded, and for us to really increase, you would have to assume some teams ahead of us are going to decrease. And I just don't see St. Louis decreasing, Cincinnati decreasing. Can't see it. And so I think we'll easily get third place. Is Pittsburgh in our conference?
Yeah, Pittsburgh is.
And I don't see Pittsburgh getting any worse.
Well, Pittsburgh lost a bit with pitching, though, this year. One of their top pitchers, A.J. Burnett, is no longer with the team.
A.J. Burnett, right.
And, yeah, he's with the Phillies, I believe, now. And then Francisco Liriano, do you really expect him to carry the starting rotation again this year. Like Laureano, he had a huge rebound year, but I don't think Laureano's going to have the same year that he did. I see Pittsburgh, taking a step back, and Cincinnati with the new manager, who knows how they're going to respond.
Right.
And we had a gentleman on the show talking about the Brewers a little bit a few weeks back, and I had brought up that the Brewers, it's actually all the professional teams in the state. The past couple of years have just been ravaged by injuries. The Brewers, the Packers, the Bucks this year, and it's like they got to have good luck on their side coming sooner or later. When things tend to go the right way, and with the Brewers lineup, if they healthy, they don't have Braun injury again this year before the suspension. You don't have guys getting hurt with hamstrings and hips and knees and all that stuff like you had. This team, I think, can contend for the division with the pitching that they have with Gallardo. I think having a bounce-back year. Kyle Loesch is going to be a little more comfortable with his second year in Milwaukee. I think Matt Garza can bring a lot to this team, especially having some run support now. I think they end up taking the division from the Cardinals because I think things are going to bounce their way for a change, and then you got the feel-good story of Hank too. So hopefully that brings some positive mojo. But I just hope they don't have the injury-plagued year.
Right, and that would be amazing if everything you just said happened and Ricky Weeks can get 30 home runs. And the Miller Park is electric, especially when the Brewers are winning, and that'll definitely be exciting for the city and something to root for. Because, like you said, we've had a drought. The Badgers have done fairly well, but from Marquette to the Bucks, the Packers season was shaky. The Brewers season last year was shaky. So we need the shining star, and hopefully the Brewers can provide that for us this upcoming baseball season.
Yeah, the key for Milwaukee is going to be a hot start because Milwaukee cannot afford, and they're leading 5-3 right now in their spring training game over Colorado. But they cannot afford to have the start that they've had the last 2 years. Last year they went 5-26, I believe. No, 5-20 in the month of May, and they were out of it before June 1st because of what they did in May. But if you look at the second half of the Brewers, the last 2 seasons, 2 years ago, they made a strong push at the end for that second wild card. And then last year, they had one of the better starting rotations and one of the better records in the second half of the year. So if they, Ron Reinicke's shown that he can win when it doesn't, I guess when it doesn't matter anymore, when the, second half of the year, he's proven he can win in September and August and, in July. He needs to win this year in March, April, May. So that's going to be key to the Brewer season. And we have about minute 15 left to go. Is there any final words you want to say at all?
And my final words would be, hopefully the Brewers can shore up first base. I think first base and Giovanni will be the keys for the Brewers to have a great season or a terrible season. I think it's going to come down to first base and pitching. And hopefully we could get someone could come out as a clear emerging starter. I don't want to really platoon at first base. Giovanni, is he really a 1 or is he really a 2? Is he potentially trade bait? So we got to figure out Giovanni. Overall, I'm expecting a better season from the Brewers, and I actually can't wait till the regular season starts. I'm going to try to go to more Brewer games this year than I've done the past couple of years. So I'm excited, and I'm ready.
Yeah, I'm excited for the season as well. And just want to thank you again for joining me. I was really short notice. I Facebook messaged you quite late last night, so I know it's really short notice. So a special thank you for joining me. And Troy should be back tomorrow. Either way, the show will go on tomorrow with or without Troy. But again, thank you for joining me, Eugene.
No problem. And we're going to have you guys on our show to help us out with our baseball preview coming up shortly.
Hey, just give me the invite, and I'll do my best to be on. So with that said, once again, thanks to Eugene, and we'll catch you again tomorrow. Have a good evening, everybody.
Light 'em up.